Hi, this is 365801 and this is my odd video of TBR and wrap-up video for the Buzzword Readathon or Buzzwordathon that took place on the 18th to the 24th of November, and that it was all about numbers, so anything with a number. It was hosted by Books and Lala and Gabby Reads. Now, as you can see, I've got a bit of a change of plant, a bit of an issue. I already filmed my TBR weeks ago, and then realised that because we've had such dreich and dreary weather, the video was almost imperceptible. You could not actually see anything in it, it was so dark. And you can also see a bit of a change. I'm afraid to say my normal wee plant is not doing very well, so I've had to change to something else because I do think that it needs something in this video, not just the book, but some sort of greenery to make you feel good. So I've got a little bonsai tree, which is taking its place just for the moment. If you are concerned at all about the plant, which, you know, to your credit if you are, it's off having a little bit of TLC and a bit of extra care somewhere else in the house where it has a little bit more light. I'm afraid to say it's my own fault. I left the blinds down too long and forgot all about it, and well, I'm not terribly good at looking after any kind of plant, so we hope this bonsai will do quite well. I've almost killed it twice since I received it as a gift, and well, it's got some green leaves now, so that's good. Anyway, I'm concerned about them. I hope you're not. It's a little bit embarrassing that I have a little plant there that it's not dead yet. We're keeping our fingers crossed. Anyway, so I've had to refilm all of this, so this will be my TBR and wrap up, all kind of filmed together, which is a bit silly, but never mind. So the books there, you can see, were my TBR. I will say how I got on, but well, we'll move on to how I was choosing my TBR and how I chose through all the numbers of my BL collection. Well, I'm looking solely at my collection and what I have in my collection that satisfies the criteria of having a number in it. So firstly, I have a couple of shonen big hitters, and that is One Piece and One Punch Man. Both the number 1 in One Piece is written by Oda Eiichiro and is currently on volume, I have no idea, is it like 302 or something? I think, I don't know. I honestly don't know, and this is the only volume I have of it in my collection. I know it's massively long, and so a little bit too daunting to try and collect at this point. One Punch Man is written by One, which also satisfies the criteria, and Yusuke Murata has done the art. Although One, of course, is actually an artist in his own right. I think he's done Mob Psycho 100, which would also satisfy the criteria, but I don't have. And that would be quite an interesting one to read, actually. I'd like to get a copy of that. I have to admit, I haven't actually read this one yet. It was given to me as a gift, which I was honestly really glad to receive, as I had watched season 1 of the anime and I thoroughly enjoyed it, as I really love those kind of apathetic or atypical unassuming heroes, such as Gintoki in Gintama or Trigun's Vash the Stampede, and Saitama in One Punch Man really satisfies all the criteria for that kind of character. I haven't watched the second season yet of the anime. I had heard that it wasn't as good as the first one. I'm kind of being really selective about what I watch and what I dedicate my time to at the moment, so I haven't watched the second season. But if you've watched the second season, do you recommend that I watch it? Is it worth investing in the time? Or should I just read the manga instead? I don't know, but either one I'm not going to add to my TBR, so I'm not really in the mood for shonen at the moment, and I'm really wanting to go through my BL collection TBR. But these are the two in the shonen genre that would really satisfy the criteria of numbers for this Buzzword Readathon. Now, next in my collection that isn't technically BL, but does have some very interesting artwork, is Countdown 7 Days, and it has the number, the actual number, 7, on the cover and in the title. And this is written by Karakara Kemuri and published by Digital Manga Publishing. Now, you might be wondering why on earth I have a volume 2 and a volume 3 and no volume 1. Well, it's because I randomly saw them for very, very cheap on Amazon and just kind of added them to my cart and kind of incidentally purchased them. I think they were only like £1 each, and I was buying other things. And I bought them separately at different times. And I have seen volume 1 for a very, very cheap price, but just didn't bother buying it because I had no idea which volumes I had. So I won't be reading this and I won't be adding it to my TBR because I won't start in the middle of a series. It is only a 3-volume series, and I do know that she has some other works published in English, but I don't have any of them either. So I will wait until I see volume 1 again for as cheap as chips as I can get, and maybe I will purchase it. But honestly, I don't know why I have this in my collection. Well, maybe it's good, I don't know. But I will find out when I get to volume 1. And when I get to volume 1, I will read it. But until then, I won't bother. So it's not going on my TBR. Okay, moving on to some more numbered series, but more in my BL collection, and a couple of obvious cases. 10 Count by Nihito Takagi, published by Sublime Manga. I was really pleased to be able to complete this series this year, so I read it all at once as soon as I had it. So the two main characters, Kurose and Shirotani, black and white, Kuro and Shiro, their names, have an unorthodox relationship, and I honestly can't say I agree with how it plays out from a mental health perspective. It is not appropriate that Kurose approaches Shirotani in the way that he does. I know mental health professionals, and they would be absolutely appalled by this behaviour and worthy of being struck off. However, in saying that, it is a fantastic portrayal of a skewed power dynamic, sexual awakening, deep-rooted psychological issues, and very hot sex scenes. So I really like Shirotani's growth throughout the series and his gradual acceptance of himself. Kurose goes through a similar but not quite so dynamic transformation. And I read this earlier in the year, so I won't actually be able to put it on my TBR, as I would like to have some new titles that I haven't quite read yet. So it's a good title, I love it, I recommend it, but I won't be reading it for this readathon. So the next title is also a standard in the BL library, and that is The World's Greatest First Love, using first as the number reference. Any number could be used, but it could be first, second, third, it could be the actual numbers written, or it could be used the numbers using the alphabet. So this one has first in the title. Now I have all that has been published, but I don't have them all in the same place. Half is in my other collection, so I already know that I can't include this in my TBR. This is a standard for me, as it is a Shungiku Nakamura title, and if you have watched my manga and character goods haul/unboxing video, you will be aware that I have a problem, and it is a Shungiku Nakamura problem. So much so that I am kind of mortified that I don't have them all together in one place. As I don't, I will not include it in my TBR. I like to read a whole series together in one sitting if possible, or over like several days, so I won't be able to do that with this one. I do like Onodera and Takano-san. It is slightly problematic, but many relationships are problematic in real life, and so I don't find it disagreeable in any way. I will continue to read this for the next, I don't know, 322 years, or however long it takes Onodera to finally fall in love. We'll see when he finally gets there. Maybe never. As long as Emerald and is it Marakawa? I keep getting them mixed up. Is it Marakawa or Kadokawa? It's Kadokawa, isn't it? Kadokawa Publishing. As long as they're making money off of Shungiku Nakamura, they will continue to slow down and eke out more chapters and chapters, and even though we're all fully aware that he really has already fallen in love. They will keep on churning out chapters slowly over the course of a year using the Emerald Publishing magazine, but we will eventually get there, I'm sure. Hopefully I won't be too old or dead before that happens, but I will continue to buy it nonetheless. So this other title that I found in my collection is Tea for Two by Yaya Sakuragi. It's a 4-volume series printed by Blue, so of course it's out of print. And I have already read it this year. I think I read it maybe February or March as part of my reading BL challenge that I've been doing over the year on Twitter. So I have already read it and will not be able to put it onto my TBR because I'm trying to actually get through my collection rather than rereading things, which is a bit of a, well, it's a bit of a challenge for me because I'm looking at this now going, oh, that was really nice, I really want to read it again. It's about a boy whose sister is in the tea ceremony club, and he goes there and meets the boy who's in the tea ceremony club, and he actually comes from a tea ceremony family, so he's kind of hoity-toity is a good way to describe him. And the two of them get together. He's very much old-fashioned. I don't know when this was actually published, but the characters are kind of old-fashioned in that respect. This is quite an old-fashioned, very much Yaya Sakuragi's earlier works. The uke-seme dynamic seems very traditional of the time period, perhaps you would say. And yet, the uke, he does martial arts, he's very athletic, but he's kind of portrayed as a bit of a dummy, and I think that's a bit unfortunate. I don't think he is. What I really love about the series is the actual tea ceremony aspect, because I learned quite a lot about that when I was in Japan. So while they were doing some of the scenes, I understood what they were doing and why they were doing it, and the significance, and why they turn the teacup round. I actually was able to make some myself. When I was in Japan, I was able to throw the potta and make the tea bowl and fire it with glaze, and even a crack appeared, and so I was taught how to add that little special gold varnish that you can put on it to make an imperfection perfect. So seeing the perfection in imperfections, and that whole idea in Japanese aesthetic. So I'm really proud that I was able to do that, and I understand quite a lot about the tea ceremony now. So this is a really nice, easygoing read. It is in some way connected to Bond of Dreams, Bond of Love, something, I can't remember actually, Yaya Sakuragi's other work off the top of my head, but I read that as well, so I was kind of going through a Yaya Sakuragi phase, trying to collect all of the volumes and read them all, and I think that was around February and March, and I'm afraid to say my memory's completely gone. I can't remember what it's called, but it's really good and I like it, so I recommend that one too, neither of which are going on this TBR. The next title is a Makoto Tattnall title. Now, I have been a bit hard on her recently due to my realisation that her character's actions and thoughts just make me really angry, and every tension point or crisis seems to kind of hinge on a lack of communication, and this just kind of bugs me. So we shall see if Ninth Sleep, I think it's just a one-shot volume, can change my mind about this. I don't know. This will be my first title to go on my TBR, as I have not read it yet at all. I think I haven't read it in previous years either, so this is the first one that's going to go on my TBR. I don't know anything about it. I haven't even bothered to read the blurb at the back honestly, but it has a 9 on the front, so it fulfills the criteria of not being read previously and having a number. So this is the first title on my TBR. The next title I have in my collection is One Night Lesson by Ryo Takagi. I recently picked up Kiripapa So go check that out on the video if that interests you. I also have not read this one, and I think this is another one-shot volume, so I will add this to my TBR. It's also a June manga title, but one of the older ones, because you can still see the pink at the bottom. So that's generally how you know when it's an older title or not. And I think this is probably also part of her older work, so we shall see if this is worth reading or not, but it's added to my TBR. The next one I have is also a one-shot volume, and that's Two of Hearts by Cano Miyamoto, and this is published by Dieu, and so this is an out-of-print title. I do like Cano Miyamoto's work. Usually it's very angsty, so I'm wondering how angsty this one's going to be. I mean, basically she's an angsty writer, and her other work that was recently published, but I think it may actually be going out of print soon, is that Sleeping Moon? I think it's called Sleeping Moon. That's a really good title. That's published by Sublime, but Sublime I think have recently said that some of the titles that they first published when they were first starting out, and Cano Miyamoto's work was one of them, they would not be republishing. So if you are in any way interested in getting Cano Miyamoto's work, that title by Sublime will not stay around forever. It's available now, and it's quite easy to get now, and you can probably still get it for a good deal, but they will go out of print eventually. So I would pick it up. It's a good title. I really like it. So we'll see about this one. Two of Hearts will be added to my TBR. Now in my collection I also have number 6, and I have the complete set, so I will be adding this to my TBR. I've not read it at all, but I'm just so happy to have it in my collection now. I wanted to get the whole thing, and I was really lucky to be able to get the full set, volumes 1 to 9. This is a Kodansha title, I think? Yeah, a Kodansha title. It's a story by Atsuko Asano. She wrote the novel, and Hinoki Kino has done the artwork. So I'm really looking forward to it. The artwork looks really lovely. The quality of the volumes looks really nice. They've got a sort of matte finish, but also a little bit shiny as well. It's really nicely published. So I'm really happy to have the full set, and I'm really happy to be able to add it to my TBR. I watched the anime years ago when I was in Japan, and my otaku students enjoy talking about it with me. So I've been looking for a good excuse to get stuck into this series, and this is the perfect excuse to add it to my TBR and finally read the actual series. Having it be 9 volumes seems a bit daunting, but I think once I get stuck in, I'll just play right through. So I'm really looking forward to reading this one. Okay, so these are the titles that I found in my collection that I will not be adding to my TBR. T for Two, 10 Count, The World's Greatest First Love, One Piece, One Punch Man, and Countdown 7 Days. Those were the titles that in my collection at the moment satisfy the criteria, but for one reason or another, mainly that I've either already read them or I just don't fancy it just now, they're not going to be added to my TBR. Now I also have other works in my collection, especially in the BL section, that do also satisfy the criteria. So I know there's probably people out there going, what about this title? What about that title? I know, I have some of them, but I don't have them all. So I really like people to help me out. I have some in my other collection, namely up in my mum and dad's loft, or attic space. I am so desperate to have somewhere where I can put all of my collection together. One day I will have them all. So I'm just going to go through some of the titles that I already have in my collection, but that were not here or available, so they won't be going in my TBR. The first one is Ichigemme. The first class is Civil Law, and that is a 2-volume series by Fumi Yoshinaga. I have both copies, and so I would like to be able to read them, and I haven't read them yet. So those are The two that I would like to add later on, maybe next year, maybe I'll be able to get them and read, because I really do like Fumi Yoshinaga's work. So, Ichigenmei, the first class is civil law. I also have 7 Days by Nihito Takagi as well, and I think it's Venio Tachibana, I think, who wrote them as the story itself. I absolutely love 7 Days, and I think I actually have 2 copies of each volume. That's what happens when you're not paying attention, or you buy bundles or lots of things. That sometimes happens, but I don't mind having 2 copies, it's lovely. And I will have a 3rd copy when the sort of omnibus or combined volume is published by Sublime. They have rescued the title and they will be publishing it. It's a lovely story, it's wonderful, and I would have chosen to read it for this readathon, just because I'm absolutely fine with rereading something that's just such a wonderful, almost a work of art. It's just such a lovely, lovely title, and something that I think is a really good introduction to the genre of BL, because it's such a gentle story, and it just happens that it involves 2 boys at senior high school, I think, one senpai, one kohai, and how they interact with each other and how their feelings develop. It's just such a sweet, slow, lovely story. So I do recommend that one if you're looking for a good title to read and you don't have a copy because June Mangas is out of print. Just wait a little while, it will come around and you can get the Sublime copy. So 7 Days is just such a lovely story. The next title I have is The First Stage of Love by Kazuhiko Mishima. This is also a June title. Kazuhiko Mishima is kind of known for her younger, semi-older uke stories from, you know, the late 90s into the 2000s kind of era, but she's really developing her style much more so now. Some of her stories are a bit odd. I can't actually remember what The First Stage of Love is all about, and if or not I have read it, so I can't actually say whether or not it's worth getting. Sorry about that. One day. The next title I have is Alley of First Love by Elima Mahara. Now, I have actually already read it this year. I really love Elima Mahara's work. I've said this already in previous videos too, and this was a good title. I enjoyed it. So if you like Elima Mahara, get it if you can. It is out of print. I think it's a blue title as well, so yeah, it'll be a little bit trickier to find, but if you can get some of Mamahara Ellie's work, it's always worth it. So that's all of the titles that I have that are not going on my TBR. If anyone knows any other BL titles that have numbers in the title, whether it's first, second, third, etc., or numbers written like T for 2, or any numbers like Countdown 7 Days when you can see the number in the title as well, any numbers at all. I think there are a few digital titles that are available, but I'm looking for some more recommendations, of course, to add to my collection. So, or any that I may have missed that I actually have. If anyone has any great ideas or any recommendations, please leave me a comment below. I'd really like to add to the collection that way. Or if you're just screaming out, what about this title? Ah, she hasn't mentioned this yet. Please let me know, because I'm always looking for more. Always looking for more. There are, of course, when I was going through my catalogue, I just looked for certain numbers, and 2 things came up, and that was 7 Seas, which are a publisher company, so they technically don't count for this challenge, I don't think. I think it needs to be within the title. So I could have chosen from 7 Seas quite easily. There's a few titles in there that I'd quite like to read or reread. but I didn't think it was quite appropriate. And the other one, the other publisher, is One Piece Books that have published I Hear the Sunspot. And I have been saving I Hear the Sunspot until I get the 4th volume, which is I think the 2nd volume of I Hear the Sunspot Limit Volume 2, that's it. So I haven't got a copy of that one yet, and as soon as I do, I will be reading that whole title, binge reading it all the way through. So I did think, oh, maybe I could get that for this, and I thought, no, it's not part of the title. So I will hopefully get that and be able to read that. I Hear the Sunspot. I've heard it's so good, I've heard it's really good, but then I've also heard that a lot of people finished volume 4 and they started giving their impressions, and I stopped reading because I didn't want it to be spoiled. So no spoilers below, please, no spoilers. I haven't got the 4th volume yet. Just tell me if it's good or not. No, in fact, don't tell me, I don't want to know yet. Oh, I'm really looking forward to it. It's something I've been saving up, obviously, for a while now. So it's something I'm really looking forward to reading. So these are the ones that are not on my TBR. So this is my TBR for the Buzzword Readathon. It will be 2 of Hearts by Cano Miyamoto, One Night Lesson by Ryo Takagi, 9 Sleep by Makoto Tattnall, and number 6, volumes 1 to 9 by Atsuko Asano, art by Hinoki Kino. I do hope that I'm able to read through all of it between the 18th and the 24th. Hopefully I'll be able to get through all volumes, but it might be a little bit of a challenge. Here's hoping. I'll let you know how I get on and my thoughts later on in a wrap-up. Okay, so this is my wrap-up for the Buzzword Readathon hosted by Books and Lala and Gabby Reads, focusing on numbers. So One Night Lesson by Ryo Takagi. This is a collection of stories. Some are 1 chapter one-shots and some are over a couple of chapters. Stories about a model and a photographer, about 2 students, one being some sort of botchan, you know, someone who's in a fancy family who kind of wants to break out and has sort of split personality or something, and another one about sharing rooms in dorms, roommates kind of thing. So yeah, I can't really say that I enjoyed this title. It was a real quick and easy read, but just as quick and easy to forget. I actually had to flick through just before I filmed this to remind myself of what the stories were all about. That's often a criticism levelled at yaoi published stories, very often published by June, but also by others in the early 2000s, kind of boom of the time, that the criticism is that they're forgettable. And for me that's not so much of a criticism in my book, but kind of a statement of fact. You read it and you forget it. So I don't think of it as a criticism, it's just something that happens. And I don't think it's terribly wrong that that it deserves so much criticism when it is forgettable. I think if it's memorable for the wrong reasons, that's much more of a criticism. Of course you want a story to be memorable for the right reasons. I was talking about previously things like 7 Days. 7 Days is a great title, it's memorable for the right reasons. Some people don't like 10 Count, and for them it's memorable for the wrong reasons. I like both titles, so I don't really mind. They're both by Nihito. I'm quite happy to read anything that she writes. But this is a title that is forgettable. You know, if a title is memorable for the right reasons, you're going to want to read it again. If it's forgettable, it can sit on your shelf, or in my case in the drawer or up in the loft, until you know, feel like you can read it again, or you pick it up and say, I can't actually remember what this is about, I'll find out again by rereading it. And that's no bad thing that it's forgettable, because it means you're probably going to reread it again. a second or even a third time. A true crime is being memorable for the wrong reasons and languishing only once read for all time, or being thrown away. You know, if it gets passed on or given away and read by someone else, that's good, but if you keep a title and you only read it once, and every time you look at it you go, oh, it was that title that I don't like, but I'm still going to keep it in my collection for whatever reason, it's just going to sit there once read. So for me, that's the true crime of a book. Not being forgettable, but being memorable for the wrong reasons. So this one is forgettable. I may very quickly forget about it and maybe read it again some other time, but it will stay in my collection because it's not memorable for the wrong reasons. My next read was Ninth Sleep by Makoto Tattnall, and I'm a little confused as to why this is actually a June title when they have their own DMP imprint. I don't know why they use this. They used to use the imprint for non-yaoi, non-BL titles, and why is Ninth Sleep in the June imprint? Is this yaoi? Is this BL? The story doesn't really seem like that to me. Of course, the way that they've drawn the front cover, it kind of gives that impression that it's going to be, but it certainly isn't in terms of the story. I suppose the story has elements that Makoto Tattnall has in her other stories, such as Steel Moon, and of course her very recognisable art style. It is a fantasy story which pits two brothers against each other over generations, including reincarnation. These brothers are doomed to continue to fight until they finally resolve their issues. And once again, all of this drama, as it were, could have been resolved if it was, you know, for their lack of communication. However, for some reason, this didn't irk me as much as in her other works, because, and I'm being quite honest here, sex was not involved. So they are brothers, and if you wanted to read more into their relationships, you certainly could, but if you didn't, you didn't have to, and you could just see it as brotherly affection and a brotherly relationship. It was kind of an odd story, and one I would probably recommend to those who like shoujo sci-fi and sort of hints of passion and deep-rooted affections, but who kind of get turned off by either overt sex in BL or certain tropes in BL. I'm okay with it, both. So actually this was kind of an okay Makoto Tattnall title. I didn't mind at all. Her stock in a way is rising, but it was an odd title and certainly not one that I would class as BL. It was more shoujo sci-fi and I didn't mind that at all. I quite liked it. So yeah, this was an okay, interesting title, not so BL, and I was really rooting for them to work out whatever differences they had. Probably because it didn't involve sex, it just involved a sort of family dynamic, and I really wanted to get behind that. There was no angst in the same way as her usual titles. So yeah, this was a good title actually. Ninth Sleep. If you can get hold of it and you like Makoto Tattnall and you like shoujo sci-fi, this is quite an interesting one to read. So the third title I read was Two of Hearts by Cano Miyamoto, which is a Jew title, so a little bit harder to get hold of if you're looking for it. Ooh, how do I feel about this one? There's a lot of things in it that I don't like. It's kind of a tricky one to review. I read it, it was quite straightforward. The two people on the front cover, the main couple, one is an older writer and he's got a bit of writer's block, and the other is quite a young boy who has a lot of psychological issues. And so it's kind of different in the same way that I was talking about 10 Count being about psychological issues and working through it and not being in an appropriate way, this also feels like it's not appropriate. But it has the added element of an age gap romance. Now, I'm not averse to age gap romance, coming from, a Shungiku Nakamura fan point. I'm okay with that element generally, but not when it also involves mental health issues as well. It just felt slightly uncomfortable. I thought he was originally the writer, maybe in his mid-20s, and so I thought, okay, so he's in his mid-20s, this other character is maybe 18, so there's not that much of an age gap. But then when I found out later on, he was in his mid-30s and he was like 16 or 17, so it just felt even more a little bit tricky because of the mental health issues that the young boy has, to do with feeling dirty because he comes from a poor family, and so he had the, how do you pronounce it, mysophobia, the tendency to wash his hands and not like to be in people's houses or being around other people or touching, due to him infecting them with his dirt and his uncleanliness, because he was teased and bullied a lot when he was a child. So a lot of these issues do get resolved and he feels better by the end of the story, so it does end on a happy and positive note in a safe and loving relationship. So there's that, as you would imagine, because it's Kano Miyamoto, there's a bit of angst along the way, so it just didn't sit quite well with me, like in the pit of my stomach. It felt slightly uncomfortable, and actually a lot of Kano Miyamoto's stories do have that element of unease about them. I don't always feel comfortable reading her stories. Her artwork is always very similar and you can recognise it quite easily, but Two of Hearts was more difficult read for me to reconcile myself to. That's no bad thing, stretching yourself in that way, but yeah, if you've read it, I'd really like to hear your take on it. If you really love that element, if you're really into age gap romances and you think this is a positive thing, especially when it comes to the ending and how domestic they are, yeah, let me know. I just felt slightly uncomfortable at times, but I do think that's Kano Miyamoto's style. So let me know if you've read it down in the comments. So the final title that I read for this Buzzword Readathon was number 6, story by Atsuko Asano and art by Hinoki Kino. I did not manage to finish the full series within the time period. I think I only managed the first 3, maybe 4 volumes before the end of the 24th. So I'm actually filming this a little bit later on because I wanted to complete the series before I posted my opinions on it. So I did finally manage to read to the end of volume 9, but not within the time of the Buzzword Readathon. The final title was really good. I'm really happy that I finished the readathon on this title. Number 6 is a real shoujo sci-fi manga. It's got that brilliant feel to it where the characters feel very realistic. The world has been really built from the ground up. It's really realised fully. There are different aspects and elements. It's really, I keep saying really, but it's just such a good title. It's all about, society and how we view it and how our place within it, and it's just such a good title. Anyway, if you don't know anything about number 6, as I said, it's a shoujo sci-fi, and the story centres around the dystopian city-state called Number 6, in a sort of fictional, hypothetical future after there has been many wars and destruction. 6 city-states are formed to create utopian existences. However, as you can imagine, all is not as it seems, and as you can see, the 2 main characters are on the covers. Shion, is a resident of number 6 who is an elite privileged child, and Nezumi, or Rat as it's translated in this volume, is a criminal fugitive residing in the West Block outside the huge wall of number 6, and their relationship with each other and their quest for the truth. I don't want to give too much of it away. As I mentioned before, there is an anime and it's beautiful. I knew instantly as soon as the opening soundtrack started that I was going to absolutely love the series. And then the fact that there was the 2 main characters and the transformation within the opening song of one of the characters. As you can see, I put up volume 1 and volume 9, and so you can see Nezumi, who's the one with the dark hair. He changes from a very sullen figure in volume 1 to quite a happy smiling figure in volume 9, whereas Shion has brown hair in volume 1, and you can see he has white hair and sort of marking on his face and around his neck on volume 9. So he's undergone quite a transformation, and they do go through quite a hefty journey, really. And I'm not going to go through it all because I don't want to ruin it for you if you don't know anything about number 6. But I highly recommend it. I really, really enjoyed it. I enjoyed the anime when I watched it, and I really enjoyed reading the story. There was more elements to it. There were more elements to the story that were not shown in the anime, but the drawings are so good. Hinoki Kino has done such a great job of presenting the characters. Dogkeeper is a lovely character, and I remember at the time that it was quite a thing that there was either a non-binary or someone whose gender was non-specific, so it wasn't specified in the language whether Dogkeeper is male or female, and that was quite a big thing. The fact that this relationship verges on a BL, but it's never really specified. Their relationship is so close, and yet I don't know, are they in a more serious relationship? I'm not bothered either way, because I just love the story and I love how they are together. And the ending it's hopeful and heartbreaking at the same time. I may have shed a tear. And a little bit sad that it ended when it got to the end. I was like, oh no, there's no more volumes. What I would love to do is actually read the story by Atsuko Asano, and I'm not sure if Kodansha USA actually published it. If they have published it, let me know please. I haven't actually checked it out, but I would really love to read the story translated. I know that it was really popular in Japan before the manga and the anime came out, but a very good popular book. So I'd love to read the book and actually hear some more about their relationship from Atsuko Asano's point of view. It's actually quite an old story now, but I really like the kind of dystopian existence and how it's from a like a shoujo perspective. So a little bit like Ursula Le Guin, or there was an anime about fractals. Gosh, that was a long time ago as well. If you know what I'm talking about, great, let me know, because I'm wondering. I do remember watching some odd things as well that kind of have a social commentary without being too specific. This is really great. If you're a fan of number 6 and you don't have this already, you watch the anime, I would get the volumes and have a good read of it, because it's a lovely story. I always wondered what exactly happened. I don't think the anime tells you. I can't remember. I think they came up with some other sort of ending that didn't quite feel satisfying, whereas this, reading the manga, felt very satisfying. I felt sad that it was over with, but satisfied that I had read to the end. So this was the final volume for my Buzzword Readathon. So this wraps up my TBR and wrap up my reviews of the books that I read for the Buzzword Readathon, focusing on numbers, mainly looking at my BL collection, and this was hosted by Books and Lala and I think Gabby Reads as well. I can't say which round this is of the Buzzword readathons because this is my first one ever. So hopefully I'll be able to read a few more. I really enjoyed it and it gave me a good excuse to read some of the titles that I have in my collection that I haven't actually looked at before, or that I've been meaning to read, like number 6. So I'm really pleased that I was able to. The first 3 that I read, Are They True, BL, Forgettable Kind. Ninth Sleep was a sort of shoujo sci-fi, and number 6 was also shoujo sci-fi, and I enjoyed both of those titles, although of course I'm sure you can tell I enjoyed number 6 much more. So I'm really pleased that I was able to get that read this year. So that wraps up my Buzzword Readathon focusing on numbers.